way deep. I'm not gonna go all the way. So I went in first to take away those epithelial angle that was, I think, about 80 micron depth. But putting mitomycin C here after 80 micron of PTK ablation will pretty much kill those epithelial cells. And that's what happened actually. So after PTK, I ended up putting mitomycin C for 1 minute. And as you can see in the center and in the periphery, you have disappearance of everything. I saw the patient 2 years later, she was off everything. So that's another way how an OCT, again, is much better than the slit lamp. This is what you see with the slit lamp, this is what you see with the OCT. Much better, more in depth, much more understanding. Not that the slit lamp is useless, no, of course it's very important. But I think in the near future, we're gonna have a digital slit lamp made of high frequency OCT. Even in the anterior chamber, we're focusing on the cornea, but this is a patient where the patient had inflammation. And I don't know, post-cataract surgery, the patient had some cells. And of course, usually what I do is just I put my mirror, my 4 mirror, and I look. But interestingly, again, because I do MS-39 on every single patient, before I put the mirror, I took a look at the MS-39, I did 360 degree, and of course, as you can see, I found a remnant of a nuclear remnant right there, and you can really know exactly it was there. And of course, on the mirror, I saw that remnant. And the nice thing, I started steroid, and I said, it's pretty small, so I'm gonna start steroid, and I don't have to every time stick that mirror in. I took a look at the MS-39, and of course, a few weeks later, it's gone. I checked 360 degree, and it's gone, and then I stopped steroids, and the inflammation was gone. So that's another way, again, to look at things that were hidden because of the internal reflection of the light using a slit lamp. Again, better than a slit lamp, take a look at this corneal ring melt. Okay, that's easy to see on the slit lamp, but sometimes all what you see on the slit lamp is just an epithelial defect. And you might think that it's just a defect. So on the slit lamp, it's kind of tricky. You need an experienced eye to really know that this defect goes all the way into the index, okay? And the OCT, rotate and check, and you can see easily that this is a melt, and this thing has to be explanted ASAP. Another way to look at it, sometimes you just see thinning, just like on this thinning over this old hexagonal index. You see stroma thinning, not necessarily a wedge defect. In here, you see sterile infiltrates and stroma liquefaction, because now you can judge the quality of the stroma without the patient squeezing. And if you increase the light on the slit lamp, you can, from the comfort of your desk, look and really see the difference, the nuances between the central stroma where it's less reflective in the periphery. And again, if you look here, you see also that you have epithelial thickening and stroma thinning. Over the index or any kind of corneal ring segment, you always have epithelial thinning and never thickening. So by default, if you see epithelial thickening, then you definitely have melt. And here the real image, where, as you can see here, you have epithelial thinning. What you can see on the right side, by the way, is a contact lens, because this patient was getting irritated from this kind of inflammation without really having a defect, but it was an inflammation because they have stroma thinning, as you can see here, and epithelial thickening, while normally, as you can see here, you have epithelial thinning because you have elevation over the corneal. So again, all these nice details, you can see it. This is a hexagon, this is a triangular ring, this ring, and as you can see, looks fine, but you have an intrusion. The patient came to me misdiagnosed as having uveitis. But when I looked, I saw some focal stromal edema, and of course, because of the edema, it wasn't apparent whether the ring really intruded inside or not. On the OCT, it was clear. You can see that you have a true intrusion into the anterior chamber. And what I did is removing that corneal ring, and the cornea didn't improve and didn't get worse. It was actually useless because it was implanted very deep. And I waited about 2 months for the edema to subside, and as you can see, you can always have this defect in there. And implanted an allogenic corneal ring segment exactly at the same position, but much shallower. And we published that in GRS's report. And as you can see, it's the allogenic segment was up. Again, OCT guided. I felt it was pretty safe to do it, and then the patient improved dramatically. This is a side note. So what I did is actually exactly the same position. I let my allogenic segment air dry. I call it the jerky technique. We published it in Cornea, and then you can insert it just like an intact. Just push it all the way in, and all what you need ideally is to pull it from the other side by SLSK. And that's how the patient got much better 1 week after. So huge difference before the ring and after implanting the cares. Now, again, the advantage of OCT sometimes is, like in this patient, you have a very steep cornea. The patient did not want to do any transplant. the patient wanted just to do some cross-linking, and I looked and I saw that the epithelial maps were okay. But again, with these corneas, never trust your epithelial maps because the epithelial maps use segmentation based on AI. But if these very advanced corneas, always trust your OCT section. So trust your own eyes, not the AI. So look at what happens with the OCT section. And of course, you can see how thick the epithelium is. 150 microns, not 60, 70. So with very advanced keratoconus, it's just an AI segmentation. You have to look by yourself. And of course, if you want to do any type of cross-linking here, you're going to completely change your protocol. You cannot just assume that the cornea is as thick as you think. You can either use Susan Jacob contact lens as cross-linking. Better is to use actually the M protocol of Cosimo Mazzotta or the Safar 400 protocol of Farhat Abezi. But either way, don't use your regular cross-linking. So again, that's how sometimes looking at OCT section, you can change your decision. And finally, just want to show you how doing OCT section on every visit is helpful. So this is a patient who developed ectasia post-LASIK and then came to us and we did cross-linking. So she did LASIK, then end up with ectasia. And of course, at 9 months of follow-up post the cross-linking, I saw this kind of haze, okay? Interestingly, it was exactly at the site of her cone. And on the slit lamp, that's the haze. That's all what you get from a slit lamp, that's it. But I was like, okay, interesting, the patient's complaining started her vision to deteriorate and it's at 9 months. How come? In 9 months, a haze developing at 9 months. How can that possible? So when I look at her OCT and I look back, and that's the advantage of looking back, this was the OCT as what, first month. So you can see the LASIK flap, okay? And then after cross-linking, that's the OCT on the 3rd month. You can start seeing haze developing in the LASIK flap. That's very interesting, and right under the cone. And again, that's her OCT on the 6th month. I was actually missing that all along because the patient was happy, quickly coming for checkup. She had developing this scar, this haze progressing, and I just missed it. And that's the one at 9 months, much thicker. So I knew this was not just a weird haze that just developed. So for me, should I relift and scrape, or should I just start steroids? And that's actually I elected to start steroids. But actually, for now, sorry, because of the font, because of it's a Microsoft. But if the patient came to me now, I probably would have started losartan. I'm sure everybody of you is following up on losartan. But again, at the time, I started topical steroids with a lot of vitamin C, and the patient improved because that's on the 10th month. That's on the 12th month. Again, I could follow up objectively, not subjectively, objectively, because this fantasy classification, I don't believe in. Here, I do believe. And of course, you can put it on octanalysis.com, our software, and you can really know how the improvement is exactly. And this is how it was. This is exactly the site of the haze under the previous cone. It actually made the cone look worse. And then by following the patient, you can see that it's much, much less now. Look at how it is now. Okay, so the patient improved vision-wise and she was happy. And finally, as I said, OCT can depict ocular history. Again, like I told you, if the patient came to you with this demarcation line plus cross-linking, having done something else before, always look at Bowman's layer, because sometimes those patients have at the same time a PRK done. So sometimes if you have haze, you have to understand if this haze is purely cross-linking or not. For instance, this patient has had PRK before because you can see the mild subepithelial haze and the loss of Bowman's layer again. Again, looking at demarcation line, you also know from OCT that shallow demarcation line are more conspicuous than deeper demarcation line because the keratosize dropped down significantly after 250 microns. That's the reason why the camera was endorsed to be below 250, and that's why Raindrop came out of the market, because it had to be at 200 to 250. So you see this is a deeper demarcation line, but the haze is much less because it's deeper. So sometimes you miss it on the slit lamp, but you don't miss it on OCT. A lot of patients who were thought they did not have a demarcation line actually do, but it's very deep. So again, that's the importance of OCT. And finally, talking about corneal ring segments, look at the epithelium, how it remodels after a ring. Again, look at how thick it is and look at how thin it becomes in the center. So if you look at the epithelium in segmental tomography, it's much thicker here, you see? And then if you look at the stroma, remove the epithelial factor, you see that the stroma was plus 18, now the stroma was plus 8. So this is stromal elevation, not anterior elevation. Take away the epithelium, you understand what's happening in the cornea. Now, this is what's happening on the curvature. But now you can understand using quote-unquote segmental tomography what's happening. So this is the tangential curvature. This is the stromal elevation, taking away the epithelium. and that's the epithelium. So you can understand now which brings which, why the epithelium remodels and the patient improves, and how structural changes happens. And by the way, we published this a month ago in the Journal of Refractive Surgery. We follow patient with cares using segmental tomography, the MS-39, and we discovered that the stromal elevation changes in 1 week, and that's it. So it means all the structural changes after corneal cares, and by the way, we did the same study on intacs. Now we're almost ready to submit, and it's exactly the same. Structural changes is just 1 week, not 3 months like we thought. However, epithelial remodeling goes up to 1 month, and then plus or minus. So everything mainly happens in 1 month. 1 week structural and up to 1 month epithelial remodeling, which also improves the patient. Case in point for this is this patient. Before and after, we ended up putting a cares, a allogenic segment, and you have a major improvement. If you dissect what's happening, this is the stromal elevation change 3 days. This is 3 days after, you have a major decrease in the stromal elevation. That's structural. Now what happens in the epithelium? Almost not much of a change. The epithelium hasn't changed yet. But if you wait about a month, now you see the blue color, so a lot of thickening proximal to the ring. You can see it also on the OCT sections, how the epithelium is thicker just proximal to the ring. Now, what happens to the cone in the middle is interesting, is that the epithelium of the cone thins out in the center, then thickens again, which is interesting because if you think about it, how come the stromal elevation decreases? The epithelium should actually thickens, not thins. If you have a cone, the epithelium thins. If you have a flattening, the epithelium should thicken. Interestingly and paradoxically, what we noticed that the first week, the epithelium actually thins out instead of thickening, even though the cone has decreased, and then it thickens again. And this brings this false improvement that you see always, whether on cares or on intacs. Who sees sometimes on the first week perfect results with the intacs, and then you have regression a little bit? Do you see that? A lot of my patients put in intacs and they're 20/20 uncorrected first week or first 3-4 days, and then 1 month, 3 months, they're still good, but they're 20/25, 20/30, they're not the same. That's because of this. So we published that again. Look at what happens. This is the tangential. We're almost done. Sorry for delaying you, but this is the tangential. You see a huge improvement at 1 week, a little bit of regression and then stability. Not always, but about 30% of my patients. So if you see what's happening exactly, how this is the epithelium. So the epithelium gets much thinner. It's red, much thinner, even though the cone became flatter, and then it thickens again, and you have thickening over the case. Now, if you look at stromal elevation, again, the stromal elevation here becomes less, but at the same time, what's happening is that the epithelium gets less. So the reason why this is happening is the following. When you implant a corneal segment, you have a gutter. So the elevation and you have a gutter. The epithelium has to fill this gutter, but the epithelium cannot come from the limbus, it's too far away. The closest neighbor is the cone. So what happens here is that from the cone, you have filling of the gutter from the cone. That's why the epithelium becomes thinner, giving you a false impression that there is even an improvement. Because the epithelium gets thinner means that the cone is actually even less conspicuous. You know what I mean? So there's an improvement. You feel like, wow, the huge improvement in the cone. But what happens later that the epithelium from the limbus comes back again slowly and repopulate that gutter, and there is an extra balance from the gutter back to the cone. That's why the epithelium thickens again. And you think it relaxes. We used to think always that, oh, okay, the cornea is remodeling again. The structure, the cornea was tensed first and then it's relaxing. It's all BS because it turns out it's just the epithelium. And again, by looking at segmental tomography using an HD OCT like the MS-39, you'll be able to understand what you're doing. That's why, again, if you're not looking at the epithelium, you're not basically doing refractive surgery, at least at this